All right, so we need to do start inequalities now. So we finished up all of the lessons on equations, and now we're going to look at inequalities. So they are going to be whenever you're doing something without an equal sign. So whenever you're looking at something less than or greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. So just to remind you, these are going to be the signs. So this sign is, oops, hang on 1 second. This sign is going to mean less than. This sign means greater than. When it has a little line underneath it, that's like half of an equal sign. So that's going to be less than or equal to, and that's greater than or equal to. Now we're going to graph these on a number line. So if they are just less than or greater than without the or equal to part underneath it, then you're going to use an open circle. And I'll explain that more on the next slide whenever we're doing the graphs. If they are or equal to, so they have a line underneath them, that means that they're going to be a closed circle. That means they're including the number because it can be equal to that number. When we are graphing them, we want our variable to always be on the left. So once it's on the left, if you're doing anything with less than or equal to, that is going to mean that you're going to shade all the numbers to the left because you're going less than those numbers. If it's greater than or equal to, you're shading to the right. I always like to think about it as if it's like an arrow. So if it's less than, you can kind of think about that like an arrow, right? It's going to the left. If it's greater than, again, it's like an arrow going to the right. If your variable is on the right-hand side, you're going to flip the inequality so that you have a variable on the left, and then you can do the problem from there. So we're going to look at how we would flip the inequality so that our variable will be on the left. So right now what it's saying is 4 is less than x. Well, if we want our variable on the left-hand side, that means we have to switch it. So you're basically just going to do a mirror image. You're going to flip the x to the other side and the 4 to the other side. And then when you do that, you also have to flip your sign. This is still staying the same thing. 4 is less than x. Okay, so think about what numbers 4 is less than, right? You could say 4 is less than 6. Well, whenever you rewrite it, 6 is greater than 4. It's still saying the same thing. It's just writing it so that the variable is on the left-hand side. If you have a negative, it's still going to be the same thing. Your negative is just going to carry over. So when we flip this, you're going to have y and negative 6. You flip them, and then don't forget to flip your sign. Okay, again, it's still saying the same thing. It's just we want, if you write it with the variable on the left-hand side, it's going to make graphing them easier. So let's take a look at graphing them. So if it wants us to graph x is greater than or equal to -1, you'll have this little drop down. You can click that. Since this is or equal to, that means you want this to be filled in. That's going to be one of the options on the drop down menu on GMM. Okay, I just copy and pasted it, so I can't actually click on them from here. So you would drop that down, you would find the one that has a filled in circle, and you would select that. Then you're going to find -1 on the graph. Okay, so that's right here. So you'll click on -1, and that'll put your line on there. Let me find a different color to use. Okay, so -1's right here, so you put your dot there. Then you need to shade it. It's saying greater than or equal to. So again, you go with that arrow. If it's greater than, the arrow's going to the right. So that was shading to the right. So we are just representing all of those solutions on this graph. If it says the x needs to be greater than or equal to -1, that means it can be equal to -1. That's why it's filled in. It's including -1, or it can be all of the numbers that are greater than -1. So 0, 1, 2, 3, all of those numbers to the right. For this one, for the next one, it says where are the solutions for 2 is less than x. Again, you want to flip that so your variable is on the left. Don't forget to flip your sign. You don't need to change the drop down because it is an open circle because it's strictly greater than. We don't want it to include 2. So we find 2, We click on that, and then it's shading again to the right. It's shading all the numbers that are greater than 2. Okay. Down here, you want to choose the graph of x is less than -1. So when we look at this, first thing, you need them to be on -1. Well, they're all on -1. Next, you have to check it has to be less than. That means it has to be an open circle. So it can't be either of those. And then it must be strictly less than, not greater than. So it has to be that choice. For this one, you're choosing the graph. Okay, we have to flip these. And then you're saying greater than or equal to. All right, so again, if that's or equal to, that means it has to be a filled in circle. And it has to be greater than, so it has to be this last one down here. Okay, one more set of examples. So now you're given the graph and you have to write the equation. So write the inequality for this graph. Use x as your variable. So we're going to start with x. Now this is a filled in circle shading to the right. So that means it's greater than or equal to, and then it's at the number -1 on the graph. Okay, these are pretty straightforward. This one, again, you start with x because it tells you to. This one is shading to the left, so that is less than. It's an open circle, so it's not or equal to. And this one is at 0. Okay, it doesn't say the numbers, but this big line is 0. And then it just counts from 1 either way. Choose the inequality for this graph. So I would write it out first and then try to find the answer that matches it. So this is saying x. This is at 1, 2, 3, -4. And it is greater than, shading to the right. Go with this sign. And then it is or equal to. So then you would find the one that goes with that. Okay. And this last one, again, is x. It's at 1, 2, -3. And then go with the same arrow. So it's greater than. Since it's not filled in, it's just strictly greater than. When you look through, you're not going to find an answer that matches it exactly. So we know that we can also rewrite it. Flip those two, flip this, and then flip your sign. Now we can find the answer that matches that. Okay, if you have any questions, just get a hold of me either with email or Microsoft Teams. Those are the two easiest ways to get a hold of me.